Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling sibling relationships.
Oh, fascinating topic.
It is, isn't it? I mean, they can be our greatest source of joy, but also the most heated arguments.
Absolutely. And, sometimes it's a confusing mix of both.
Right, like what makes these relationships so unique? Like what are we hoping to find out in this deep dive?
Well, I think one of the things we need to remember is that sibling relationships are often our longest lasting relationships.
Oh, that's interesting.
They witness everything from our awkward phases to our triumphs.
It's true, and unlike friendships that we choose later in life, we don't get to pick our siblings.
That's right. And that lack of choice, is part of what makes these bonds so intense.
Yeah?
We're bound together by family history, by shared experiences, and sometimes, a healthy dose of rivalry.
Okay, so how do we begin to kind of untangle this web of love, competition, and everything in between?
Well, I think we have to start by recognizing the factors that shape sibling dynamics, right? So things like age gaps,
Okay?
individual personalities, and the overall family environment all play a role.
I can see how those all make sense.
Like, for instance, research has shown that closer age gaps can lead to more intense rivalry, especially in early childhood.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember, just constantly battling with my brother over toys when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
It just felt like this constant power struggle.
Classic sibling behavior.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times those squabbles often stem from something deeper, right?
Like what?
Well, think about it. Young children are still developing their sense of self. So when they perceive that maybe a sibling is getting more attention
Uh-huh.
or being treated differently, it can trigger those feelings of jealousy and resentment.
So it's not even really about the toy itself.
Right.
It's about that, like, underlying need for love and validation.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's so crucial for parents to understand the why behind the bickering.
Yeah.
Are they clashing over a perceived injustice? Is one child feeling overshadowed by the other? Once you identify that root cause, then you can address the issue more effectively.
So observation is really key.
Absolutely.
Like paying attention to those patterns and understanding what's driving the conflict.
Yeah, it's like being a detective,
Okay.
but instead of solving crimes, you're decoding sibling dynamic.
I love that.
And this understanding is the first step towards fostering those positive, supportive relationships that we all want for our kids.
Okay, so we've talked about the complexities and the conflicts, but how do we shift from, like, the constant bickering to building that awesome sibling bond?
Right.
Is that even possible?
It absolutely is. And it's not about creating some idyllic, conflict-free utopia.
Right.
Remember, disagreements are a natural part of any close relationship.
Uh-huh.
The key is equipping kids with the tools to handle those conflicts constructively,
Okay.
and that's where I think practical strategies come in.
So less like Lord of the Flies and more cooperative team building.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I like the sound of that. What are some of those strategies?
Well, one powerful approach is fostering a sense of teamwork.
Okay.
Now I know what you're thinking.
What?
Chores. Make them do chores together. And while that can work, it's about more than just sharing tasks.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Go on.
It's about framing challenges as opportunities to collaborate.
Okay.
Instead of pitting kids against each other, like who can clean their room faster, we can encourage them to work together towards a common goal.
I see.
So maybe they're planning a surprise party for a grandparent or building a fort in the backyard.
Oh, I love that. It takes the pressure off individual performance and it creates a more supportive, we're in this together kind of environment.
Exactly. And think about it. Tackling a challenge as a team can be so much more fun than going it alone.
Definitely beats arguing over who gets to control the TV remote.
Right.
But even with a focus on teamwork, I imagine individual attention is still important, right?
Absolutely. Spending one-on-one time with each sibling, making them feel seen and valued for who they are, that's key to reducing those feelings of competition that can fuel rivalry.
It makes me think back to when my parents would read bedtime stories. It didn't matter how silly or how short the story was. It was that dedicated time that made me feel special.
Those little moments really do add up. It's about those quality interactions that reinforce that parent-child bond and create a sense of security.
That makes sense.
But while we're on the topic of giving kids the tools they need, we can't forget about conflict resolution skills.
Oh, you mean like teaching them to be tiny diplomats?
Yeah.
I am all for less screaming and more productive dialogue.
Well, maybe not quite diplomat, but definitely giving them the tools to communicate effectively and resolve conflicts peacefully.
Okay.
Think about it. How many adult conflicts could be avoided if we all knew how to express our feelings calmly and listen attentively to the other person's perspective?
That's a really good point. But how do we teach kids these skills? It's not like they come pre-programmed with conflict resolution software or something.
It starts with modeling those behaviors
No,
ourselves.
okay.
Children are constantly watching us, learning from our actions.
Uh-huh.
So when they see us handling disagreements respectfully, they're more likely to follow suit.
So basically, we need to be the grown-ups in the room, even when we're feeling frustrated.
Exactly.
Lead by example.
Right, and it goes beyond just modeling. We need to actively teach kids how to communicate using I feel statements, how to listen without interrupting, and how to brainstorm solutions together.
It's like giving them a whole new vocabulary for dealing with those tricky situations.
Yes,
And honestly, I think even adults could benefit from brushing up on those skills.
absolutely. But you know what else can help create a more peaceful environment?
What's that?
Clear and fair family rules.
Ah, the good old rule book.
Yes.
Although I have to admit, some of the rules my parents had seemed pretty arbitrary at the time.
Of course, but even those seemingly silly rules often serve a purpose.
Okay.
It's about creating a sense of consistency and fairness,
Uh-huh.
which then reduces arguments that are rooted in a feeling of injustice.
Like the rule in our house about who gets to pick the music in the car on long drives.
Exactly. It might seem trivial, but it prevents those constant power struggles.
Right.
And it gets a sense of predictability.
So it's less about the specific rule
Yeah,
and more about the principle of fairness.
right.
Got it.
And while we're on the topic of fairness, we need to talk about the danger of comparing siblings.
Oh, this is a big one. I still remember cringing every time my parents compared my athletic abilities to my sisters. It made me feel so inadequate.
It's natural for parents to want the best for their children,
Yeah,
but comparisons can be incredibly damaging. Instead of highlighting differences, we should focus on celebrating each child's unique strengths and talents.
that's a good point.
It's about fostering a growth mindset
Uh-huh.
where each child feels supported and encouraged to reach their full potential regardless of how their sibling is performing.
So instead of saying, why can't you be more like your brother, we should be saying, what are you passionate about?
Yes.
How can we help you pursue your interests?
Exactly. It's about recognizing and nurturing their individuality.
I like that.
And speaking of nurturing, there's another powerful tool we can use to strengthen those sibling bonds.
What's that?
Traditions.
Oh, you mean like family game night or those epic summer road trips?
Yes, those shared rituals, whether big or small, they create lasting memories and strengthen those feelings of connection.
I have such fond memories of our annual family camping trips. It was always a guaranteed week of adventure and laughter and, yeah, even some sibling bonding.
Those shared experiences become part of your family's narrative.
Yeah.
They build a foundation of shared history and create a sense of belonging.
Okay, I'm convinced. Family traditions are officially awesome.
They are.
But let's be realistic. Even with all these strategies in place, sibling rivalry is probably inevitable, right?
Of course, sibling relationships are complex and dynamic.
Uh-huh.
There will be times when those squabbles erupt, no matter how hard we try to prevent them.
So what do we do when the inevitable happens? How do we, minimize the drama without turning into constant referees? That's what I want to know.
And that's exactly what we'll dive into next. Before we jump into the how-to of minimizing sibling drama, I think it's important to step back and remember why this all matters.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've talked about all the challenges,
Right.
but we haven't really explored why it's so important to nurture these relationships in the first place.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in those day-to-day squabbles and forget that these bonds have the potential to be incredibly rewarding.
So remind us, why does all this effort really matter in the long run?
Okay, so for starters, siblings can provide a unique and invaluable form of emotional support throughout life. They've known us longer than almost anyone else.
It's true.
They've seen us at our best and worst,
Uh-huh.
and they get it. They understand our family dynamics, our shared history in a way that others just can't.
Yeah, it's like having a built-in best friend who just gets you
Exactly.
without even having to explain yourself.
And that shared history, that deep understanding, it creates a level of trust and intimacy that can be hard to find in other relationships.
Yeah, and this support isn't just anecdotal, right?
Right.
Like studies have shown that strong sibling relationships are actually linked to better mental and emotional well-being throughout life.
That's right, but it goes beyond just emotional support.
Okay.
Navigating sibling relationships also hones crucial social skills
Oh, interesting.
that benefit individuals in all aspects of life.
Okay, explain that one to me. How do those childhood arguments over who gets to sit in the front seat translate into valuable life skills?
Well, think about it. Siblings are constantly practicing things like conflict resolution,
Uh-huh.
negotiation, compromise. They learn to express their needs, to listen to others' perspectives.
Right.
and to find solutions that work for everyone involved.
It's like a crash course in diplomacy, right, in their own living room.
Exactly. And these skills are transferable to so many other areas of life.
Oh, wow.
You know, from navigating friendships and romantic relationships to succeeding in the workplace.
That makes so much sense. We're always the only kids to, play nice and share.
Right.
But we don't always connect those lessons to the bigger picture of, social and emotional development.
And strong sibling bonds contribute to something else that's crucial.
What's that?
A sense of family unity and belonging.
Oh, yeah.
They reinforce those ties that bind, the shared traditions, and create a web of support that extends beyond the immediate family.
Yeah, it's like those holiday gatherings where everyone's, reminiscing about childhood antics.
Exactly.
Those stories and those shared memories, they create such a sense of connection that goes back generations.
And those connections can be especially valuable as we age.
Yeah, how so?
Well, social circles tend to shrink as we get older.
Yeah.
Friends move away, families change, but sibling...
Those relationships can endure.
Exactly, offering a sense of continuity and belonging throughout life.
It's almost like an investment in your future well-being, both emotionally and socially.
Exactly. So when we're talking about strategies for minimizing sibling rivalry, it's important to remember that we're not just trying to create a peaceful household in the short term.
Yeah.
We're laying the foundation for strong, supportive relationships that can benefit our children for years to come.
Okay, now I'm really motivated to tackle those squabbles. So let's get back to those practical strategies.
Okay.
What can we do to minimize the drama when those inevitable conflicts erupt?
Well, one of the simplest yet most effective strategies is giving each child a sense of ownership.
Okay, I'm picturing designated spaces like keep out signs.
Yes.
Maybe a moat with alligators. Okay, maybe not the alligators, but I get the idea.
You're on the right track. It's about providing that personal space.
Okay.
Even if it's just, a corner of a shared bedroom, a special shelf,
Uh-huh.
or, a designated time slot for using a shared device.
So it's about creating those boundaries that foster a sense of autonomy, right, within the family unit.
Exactly. It reduces conflicts over territory and possessions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's not just about physical space. It's also about recognizing and respecting each child's individual interests and activities.
So encouraging them to pursue their own hobbies and passions,
Yes.
even if they're completely different from their siblings.
Absolutely. The more we foster individuality and celebrate those differences, the less likely siblings are to feel threatened by each other's success.
Instead of competing for the same spotlight,
Right.
they're each shining in their own unique way. I like that.
And speaking of competition,
Yeah.
it's not something that we need to eliminate entirely.
Okay.
It's about reframing how we approach it.
Okay, I'm all ears. How do we do that?
Instead of focusing on who's better or who wins,
Right.
we can encourage individual progress and self-improvement. So instead of comparing, your daughter's soccer skills to her brother's, you might say, wow, you're really improving your footwork. You're so much faster than you were last month.
I see. So it's about shifting the focus from competing against each other to competing against themselves.
Yes.
Striving to become the best version of themselves.
Exactly. It's a much healthier and more motivating approach. But let's be honest, even with the best intentions and strategies, there will be times when those sibling squabbles escalate.
Okay, so what do we do when the shouting starts and the accusations fly?
That's when knowing how and when to intervene becomes crucial.
Okay.
We don't want to be referees all the time, but we also can't let things get out of hand.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Yes.
Between giving them space to work things out and stepping in when necessary. But how do we know when it's time to intervene? What are the red flags?
Well, if the conflict becomes physically aggressive,
Okay.
if one sibling is consistently being bullied or excluded,
Uh-huh.
or if the conflict is causing significant emotional distress, those are all signs that it's time for adult intervention.
Okay, and when we do step in, what's the best approach? I know from experience that playing judge and jury can backfire pretty quickly.
You're right. Our role is to facilitate a peaceful resolution, not to declare a winner or punish a wrongdoer.
So what does that look like in practice? Give us an example.
So imagine your kids are arguing over a video game.
Okay.
Instead of taking sides or dictating a solution, you might say something like, hey, I see you're both really frustrated right now. Let's take a few minutes to cool down, and then each of you can tell me what happened from your perspective.
It's about creating that safe space for them to express their emotions and feel heard without judgment.
Exactly. And then, once everyone is calm,
Yeah.
you can guide them towards brainstorming solutions together.
It's empowering them to be part of the solution.
Yes.
Rather than imposing a delusion on them. I love that. But I have to admit, sometimes it feels like we're constantly focusing on the negative, on what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, uh-huh.
How do we shift that focus towards the positive?
That's where the power of positive reinforcement comes in.
Okay.
Instead of only intervening when they're fighting, we
Yeah,
can make a conscious effort to catch them being good.
I like that.
So celebrating those moments of cooperation,
Uh-huh.
kindness, and shared laughter, it's like that saying, what you focus on expands.
Exactly. And when we focus on those positive interactions, we're not only reinforcing those behaviors,
Right?
but we're also creating a more positive and supportive family dynamic overall.
Yes, it's like we're training our brains to see the good, both in our kids and in our relationships with them.
And let's not forget one of the most important skills we can teach our children,
What's that?
the ability to apologize sincerely and forgive wholeheartedly.
Yes, this is huge. We all make mistakes, and learning to own up to those mistakes and move forward with grace is essential for healthy relationships.
Absolutely. And it starts with modeling those behaviors ourselves.
Right.
When children see their parents apologizing to each other
Uh-huh.
and extending forgiveness freely, it normalizes those behaviors.
It creates a culture of compassion and understanding within the family unit.
Yeah, it's about acknowledging that we're all human. We all mess up sometimes.
Right.
And that's okay. What matters is how we handle those moments.
And that ability to apologize and forgive, to move on from conflict without holding grudges, is something that will serve them well in all aspects of their lives.
It's a life skill that goes far beyond sibling relationships.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to emphasize that nurturing positive sibling relationships is an ongoing process.
Uh-huh.
It requires effort, intentionality, and a willingness to adapt as our children grow and change.
It's not always easy,
No.
but it's definitely worth it.
And I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
What works for one family might not work for another, and that's okay.
Yeah, the key is to find those strategies that resonate with your family's values and adapt them to your unique circumstances.
Right. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't be afraid to seek guidance from a trusted professional.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shame in asking for help. And remember, even small steps in the right directions can make a big difference.
Couldn't agree more.
Welcome back to our deep dive on sibling relationships. We've really been exploring some fascinating aspects of this bond.
We have, and as we wrap up, I want to kind of circle back to something we talked about earlier, which is the unique nature of sibling relationships.
Yeah.
These bonds are truly unlike any other.
That's so true. I mean, we don't choose our siblings, right?
Right.
We're thrown into this relationship from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
And yet, these bonds have the potential to be some of the most meaningful and enduring connections in our lives.
They shape us in profound ways, and I think it's those early interactions with our siblings.
Mm-hmm.
The squabbles over toys, the shared secrets, the fierce loyalty, they lay the foundation for how we navigate relationships throughout our lives.
It's like a training ground for all those social and emotional skills we need
Right.
to thrive in the world, right?
Exactly.
We learn about conflict resolution, empathy, compromise, even competition,
Right.
all within the context of this, unique and often intense relationship.
And what's fascinating is that these lessons often happen organically, without us even realizing it. We're just being kids, playing, arguing, making up. But those experiences are shaping our brains, our understanding of ourselves and others.
It makes me think about all those times I rolled my eyes at my parents
Oh, I know.
when they told me to be nice to your sister. Little did I know they were actually imparting some pretty valuable life lessons.
Absolutely. And sometimes I think the most profound lessons come from those seemingly insignificant moments.
Uh-huh. Like what?
A shared joke, a whispered confidence, a gesture of kindness when we're feeling down.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that weave the fabric of these relationships, creating this tapestry of shared experiences and memories.
And that tapestry becomes richer and more intricate over time. As siblings grow older, their relationships evolve.
Yeah.
They go through life's milestones together, graduations, weddings, the birth of their own children. They experience loss and heartbreak, and they're there for each other through it all.
It's like they have this shared language, this unspoken understanding
Yeah.
that transcends words. They can read each other's moods, anticipate each other's needs, and offer support in a way that no one else can.
It's a truly unique and powerful connection, and I think it's something worth celebrating and nurturing, even when those relationships are challenging,
Absolutely.
because the rewards of strong sibling bonds are immeasurable.
And those rewards extend far beyond childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Studies have shown that strong sibling relationships are linked to better mental and physical health in adulthood.
Wow.
They can provide a sense of belonging, purpose, and support during times of stress and transition.
It's like having a built-in support system
Exactly.
that's always there for you no matter what life throws your way.
And I think it's important to remember that nurturing these relationships is an ongoing process.
Right.
It's not about achieving some, perfect state of sibling harmony.
Yeah.
It's about showing up, being present, and making an effort to connect, even when it's hard.
It's about letting go of expectations, embracing those individual differences, and just celebrating the unique and evolving nature of these bonds.
And sometimes it's about simply being there,
Yeah,
listening without judgment, offering a shoulder to cry on, sharing a laugh. Those small gestures can make a world of difference.
well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights.
Of
I
course.
think we've all learned so much about the complexities, the challenges, and the incredible rewards of these really fascinating bonds.
Me too.
And I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about navigating sibling relationships, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. Thanks for joining us, everyone, on this deep dive into the world of sibling relationships.
It's been a pleasure. And until next time, keep exploring.